Welcome to this round 2 review edition of Inside the Huddle. Brian Chimino once again with Beth Long of Fox Sports and Scout.com. And let's talk right off the bat about the Stephenson Patriots. For a year, they won in Loyola, they got Loyola, and they knocked off Loyola 24-21. What about the defensive effort by the Patriots, sacking Aiden Walsh 5 times?
Started off with Nick Dillon, who's headed to Eastern Michigan, 2 sacks. Also, Blake Drasner with a crazy game-changing play, holds Loyola on 4th down, 42 seconds left, secure the game. Only won by 3 points. It was a close one, as we kind of expected, but big defensive effort, certainly something we weren't thinking we'd be talking about going into the quarterfinals. The offense did get fired up, though. Willie Bourbon threw 2 touchdowns. He also threw 2 picks, something that I think will have to be resolved as they continue to move forward in the 8A bracket. But Cameron Green back involved in the game. He had 6 catches for 84 yards. Bourbon got the offense rolling. The defense is rolling. Stevenson's going to be tough to stop if they continue in all facets of the game like that.
And a couple of those catches by Cameron Green were on 3rd downs in the 4th quarter, like in huge situations. So, like I said, Cameron Green heading to Northwestern, a big game. You know, the saying goes, let's give the devil their due. How about we give the Broncos their due, Beth? Because a 21-7 dominant win over previously unbeaten Maine South. And again, let's talk about defense. Brian Collis had no shot. 7 sacks, 3 interceptions, and Barrington held Maine South to 28 yards rushing.
Well, and the only games that Maine South has had close games this season have been games where they have shut down Brian Collis, and that's been impossible to do. They were undefeated to this point. 3 interceptions, though, that's the kind of turnover margin that wins games for you. And like you said, the Broncos' defense was huge. Coach Joe Sanchez said that they knew that it was going to have to take an uncommon feat to beat Maine South. Exactly what they did. And the 21-7 final score was a little deceiving, too, because Maine South's 7 points came off of an 80-plus yard interception. So it wasn't even like Brian Collis drove down the field with that offense. It was a big defensive play. Really, if you take out the defensive points there, it's 21-0. So impressive performance by Barrington. Earned them a spot in the top 25. I heard you guys, some of you were a little angry they weren't in there last week. It was their signature win. They didn't have a signature win up to this point. Now they've got it strongly in the top 25, top 15 for that matter, and I think that, you know, they proved themselves this week, and I'm excited to see what they do going forward.
Sticking with Class 8A, how about the Simeon Wolverines? Their offense supercharged up 55-17 over Hinsdale Central, but again, more defense. Antonio Crosby going to work.
Simeon is really good. I mean, we had them in the top 10 last week anyways, but they absolutely proved themselves. There is no doubt in my mind that this team is special, certainly for the Wolverines. Dion Earls had a huge game. He's small, he's compact, but he can move. Have to mention the defense. Junior defensive lineman Antonio Crosby had a very big game, a couple game-changing plays, including a fumble return for a touchdown. Maurice Burton, a senior defensive line, I talked to Coach Dante Colbreth before the game, asked him, if you were going to make the case for any of your athletes to be on the all-area team, who would it be? And his, right off the top of his head, defensive lineman Maurice Burton. He had a good game as well, and their offense put up almost 400 yards, and with an effort like that, it's going to be pretty hard to stop them.
Let's move on down to Class 7A. Providence for the 2nd time this season, knocking off St Rita. This one wasn't even close. 35-3. Justin Hunterford doing it all. Threw for 2 touchdowns, kicked 2 field goals. He now has 38 touchdowns on the year.
It's really hard to knock off a team twice in one season, especially the second time being a convincing win like Providence had over St Rita. One of the big things, though, Miles Boykin was back. He had a big brace on his elbow. He was clearly a little bit banged up, but he caught a couple pretty impressive catches, had a long touchdown run, was still pretty hard to cover. 38 touchdowns from Hunterford on the season, 18 to Boykin on the season, and it's just their offense is lighting up right now. Can't forget Richie Warfield. He's only a sophomore. He's the future of Providence football. He looked really good. I actually went back and watched his highlight film after because I was pretty impressed by him. He's sneaky, and he can, you know, just take it up the gut and make plays too. So they've got like a very dynamic offense, and once again, another team that is definitely rolling right now.
And down in Class 5A, Montini continues to haunt the nightmares of Joliet Catholic, ending their season for the 5th time in the last 6 seasons. 27-13 the final after Montini outscored them 17-0 in the 4th quarter.
Certainly, Montini has Joliet Catholic's number. Joliet Catholic has been playing better ball as of late. Montini is just a playoff team, kind of like Naperville Central. All these guys that we're talking about, Weenwarville South, that just seem to have this type of magic in the playoffs. That's Montini. One player of the game, probably Terrell Johnson. He's a little bit of an under the radar recruit. He's a kid who's 6'2". He's like 220 pounds. He's a good sized linebacker. He had an interception, returned it back to the 1 yard line. Leon Thornton, the wide receiver who's headed to Indiana, just like Niall Sykes last year, turned him into a bit of a fullback running back, rushed in for 1 yard. So Montini doesn't have any lack of talent. It's just once they all start playing together and have this, playoff dream moving forward, they're going to be pretty interesting to watch.
And before we end this review episode, let's talk about some of the new top teams in the Super 25. Of course, we mentioned Barrington up to number 13, but you also have at the bottom at 24 and 25, Libertyville back in the Super 25, along with Hinsdale South.
Libertyville has had several impressive weeks, and I thought it was about time to get them in there. Montini had to throw them in there. I just don't see them letting up anytime soon. Another team to mention, though, Fenwick. That was a hard one for me to figure out. Do I want to put Libertyville, Fenwick in the top 25? They play each other this weekend, so it will be very interesting to see exactly which one of the two of those guys maybe deserves to be in that top 25.
And I have to throw a shout out to Riley Lee's quarterback at Libertyville. I've seen a couple times, just a junior, and he has over 30 rushing touchdowns at quarterback position. So very dynamic player for the Wildcats. So that'll do it for this round 2 review edition of Inside the Huddle. Check back later in the week for Beth's weekly MVP segment featuring.
This week we're featuring 2 twin offensive linemen from Nazareth, John and Patrick Kilcommons. Both are headed to Dartmouth, and it should be very interesting because they'll probably dwarf me. They're very large human beings, but Nazareth is headed on to the quarterfinals in the 6A division, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that.
And after that, we'll preview some of the big quarterfinal matchups next week. For Beth Long, I'm Brian Chimino. We'll see you guys later.